Welcome to Research Talk. I hope you all are enjoying our journey together on qualitative research. As you know, we are in this segment where we are focusing on data analysis in qualitative research. And in our previous videos, we talked about some ways of coding the data. We covered descriptive coding, we covered in vivo coding. Today, I'm going to talk about another exciting method, very popular method of coding qualitative data, and this is called process coding. So, what is process coding? As the word itself tells you, the process. So, this way of coding is focuses on the processes inherent in any social phenomenon that we investigate. So, if you think about qualitative research, qualitative research is focused on understanding people's experiences, perceptions, attitudes related to any phenomenon. Now, people's experiences, when we interview them and try to understand people's perception, people share those experiences and share some of the concepts that they live through. And to understand those experiences, those concepts of people, how can we better understand those? And as you know, in descriptive coding, we try to capture those experiences through nouns. So we use noun phrases as a way to code the data. What we do in process coding, we try to capture the actions inherent in the concept, the experience that our research participants are sharing. And this is really interesting. If you think carefully, let's say I want to understand the concept of honesty. So people define honesty based on their experience, but a better way to understand people's experiences and how they conceptualize honesty is focusing on the actions that people are taking. And if we could focus coding on those actions, that will help us to understand how these people conceptualize honesty. So if I have a segment of excerpt of data that people sharing or maybe reflecting on the concept of honesty, to capture a better sense, if I code that data in action, which is like what might be some possible actions related to honesty. So one could be being truthful in day-to-day dealings. So a person being truthful in his or her day-to-day dealings, that will be, we can perceive it as honesty, right? Similarly, let's say if I'm exploring, if I'm interviewing people and try to understand the concept of compassion. Now, to understand this concept, what I need to focus on is the action piece of compassion. What might be the action part of compassion experience is being sensitive to others' suffering. Being sensitive. So that will be our action if a person is being sensitive. Another action component of conceptualizing compassion would be helping others in alleviating suffering. So there are two components here: action, which is being sensitive to other suffering, and being helpful, helping others to alleviate suffering. So you see what is happening here. We are focusing on the action piece of compassion, being sensitive, helping others. So this is what happens in process coding. We as social scientists, when we look at the data, we focus on actions, behaviors, and we code these actions and behaviors to understand people's experiences, how they conceptualize a social phenomenon, a social experience. So that what process coding is focused upon. And this method was developed by grounded theory, grounded theorist. So if you remember, in grounded theory, the focus of a grounded theory study is to understand a social process and the variables, the factors involved in any social process. And to understand those social processes, because these are actions, so the grounded theory suggests coding the data as process coding. So you focused on the actions, behaviors, and how you code that. You don't use noun. So let me remove some of the stuff here. It's getting crowded. So in process coding, what we do actually, we code not nouns, but we code actions. So we use verbs and gerunds to code our data. In fact, only gerunds. What is a gerund? You already know that in grammar, in English grammar, a gerund is an action verb where you have an ing form of the verb and it denotes actions. So in process coding, social scientists use actions coding, and which is gerund. In some literature, process coding is also called as gerund coding. You remember in descriptive coding, we used noun. In process coding, we use gerund. And gerund is verb plus ing. So if I say, I like swimming, so swimming is a gerund here. So in summary, process coding is an approach of coding the data which focuses on actions, behaviors, and constructs codes which are gerund. So ing verb plus ing they becomes the code. So that's briefly about what a process coding is. And let me open my computer and show and demonstrate you how process coding looks like in practice. So you could see on my screen that this is a transcript from a study, and the study is about exploring undergraduate and graduate students' experiences with online learning during COVID-19. So this is the transcript, and let me create some margins on the right side for our coding. So I selected the transcript and then go to layout, then margins, and then I select custom margins, and then on the right side let me create 2.5 inch to margin. Let me increase a little bit, 2.8. So now you could see we have created margin on the right side for our coding. And now let me insert a coding box, a text box here. Let me select this one this time. Let me write here process coding. All right, so let's begin our coding. So this excerpt, we start with the researcher thanking the participant. Thanks for joining me today. Before we dive into online learning, could you share a bit about your major and how you have found your courses so far? So as I said previously, we do not code researcher questions and what they share. We only code research participants excerpt. So here the response is, of course, I'm majoring in English literature. I've really enjoyed my courses, especially the deep dive into different literary periods. The shift to online learning was unexpected but interesting. So this excerpt, since this study is focused on understanding the experience online learning, I can code this one as navigating online learning. There's nothing much to talk about because he's only sharing about what he is studying, not about online navigation. So let's keep moving. Interesting shift indeed. How was that transition for you, moving from in-person to online classes? So this one, let's code. So, and then the participant is responding. It was a bit of a roller coaster, honestly. At first, I was excited about the flexibility, but I quickly realized how much I missed the online dynamics. It took me a while to find a rhythm that worked for me in the online space. So let's code this one. So the one thing that kind of grabs my attention is flexibility. So let me code this one as being excited for flexibility. You see what I'm doing? That I'm using action verbs here, as I discussed previously, that in process coding we use gerund to code to generate codes. So being excited for flexibility. Another code we could create here is missing classroom dynamics. And that's what he says, like how much I miss the classroom dynamics. So missing classroom dynamics. Another thing he shared here is it took a while to find a rhythm that worked for me in the online space. And I can quote this one as finding rhythm in online learning. So I have created three quotes here in this excerpt: being excited for flexibility, missing classroom dynamics, finding rhythm in online learning. So you can see in process coding, we use verbs with ing, which I call gerund, in all the codes that we generate. And the purpose we are doing it is to focus on the actions, focus on the process. And that's why this method is very, very popular, because it helps you to really see the underlying processes, the underlying construction of meaning, and what possible variables which might be implicated in creating those meanings. So that's what we are doing here. Let's keep moving and do some more coding. So the next one is, the researcher is saying, can you tell me about any specific strategies you found helpful in adapting to online learning? And obviously we do not code researchers excerpt. So in response to researcher question, the participant is saying, yeah, one thing that really helped me was setting up a dedicated study area at home. It sounds simple, but it made a huge difference in how I focused. I also started using more digital tools like note-taking apps and online calendars to keep track of everything. So let's do coding here. So what this person is talking about, creating study environment. So that might be creating study environment. And in the second part of the excerpt, he is talking about how he is utilizing digital tools like note-taking apps and online calendars to keep track of everything. So I can code this excerpt as leveraging digital tools. Okay, now let's move again. So now the researcher is responding. That sounds useful. Did you encounter any challenges during this adaptation? For sure, distractions at home were a big one, and honestly, sometimes feeling a bit isolated from peers and instructors. It's different not being able to just chat after class or ask a quick question. So, he's sharing about some of the challenges in this transition. So, the first things he's talking about distractions at home. So, let me, one code we could do is combating distractions. Uh, Another code could be feeling isolated, and he's also talking about it's different not being able to just chat after the class to ask a quick question. So we could code it as maybe seeking support after the class. No, lacking support after class. So what you have noticed here in this, the what we are doing here is we are coding in a process using the process method, and in all my code you see gerund, verb with ing, showing the flow of the actions. And this is what we do in process coding. Let me take another excerpt, not another excerpt, let's continue with another example here. So let me first add a text box here. Okay, so the researcher is asking, how did you manage those feelings of isolation? And the response is, I tried to be more proactive in reaching out, participating more in online forums, and setting up virtual study groups helped. It wasn't the same, but it did help bridge a gap a bit. So, what code comes to your mind? I'm thinking about seeking connections as a code here. And then he's also happening here is adjusting study habits. So he is adjusting his study habits based on the challenges he's experiencing. So participating more in online forums and setting up virtual study groups helped. So yes, so that's what is happening here. He's seeking more connections in the virtual medium to support his learning. Now the researcher is responding, switching gears a bit, how do you think online learning has impacted your academic performance? And then the research participant is responding, it's mixed. For some courses, I have actually found I performed better because I can go at my own pace. But for others, especially where discussions are key, it's been tougher to engage deeply with the material. So let's code here. So one thing we could code, because he's discussing about lacking engagement during the discussion. So what is happening, this is what he's talking about. Especially where discussions are key, it's been tougher to engage deeply with the material. So he's experiencing problem here. With some classes it is okay, but classes which requires more discussion, that's where the challenge is. So I coded here lacking engagement in discussion. So that's in briefly how process coding looks like. As I said previously, process coding focuses on using gerund as a code because it wants to highlight the social processes, the actions involved in the social phenomenon or the experience that the research participant is sharing. I hope it helped you to get a sense of how process coding looks like in qualitative data analysis. Thank you very much, and I will see you again in another video.